what we're dealing with here is forcing the Congress of the United States to force the executive branch to reveal to the people of the world the 6 major facts that have to be addressed. Number one, that the UFO phenomenon is real.
Welcome to Good Vibes TV. I'm your host, Lesley Klein, here to help you raise your vibration so you can thrive. My guest today is Craig Richards, who is from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Craig has been studying UFOs since 2019. He heads up a group called the UFO Discussion Group with over 200 members, and he's also the North Carolina lead for the Citizens for Disclosure Group, which is the activist volunteer part of the New Paradigm Institute. Please join me as we welcome Craig Richards. Craig, so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Lesley, for having me. I really appreciate this.
Well, I learned about you through the Citizens for Disclosure Group. We are in some interesting times here with all kinds of UFO, UAP disclosure. So this show is all about bringing people up to speed on what's going on with disclosure. So tell me, how did you get involved in the UFO, UAP movement? I understand you've got a group that's been meeting for like 5 years. How did that all start?
Back in 2019 was when I first became aware that there had been a front page article in the New York Times talking about a government program that had been studying UFOs, or, the term nowadays is UAPs. And they had released also some videos from Navy pilot gun camera footage. And that gun camera footage showed what they call UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena. These were basically flying saucers. At least one of them kind of looked like a flying saucer. One looked like what's been commonly referred to as a Tic Tac, like the little breath mint candy. And this was the first time that we had seen, government revelations of anything anomalous like this. And whereas, I've always followed UFOs and thought it was an intriguing subject. This was the first time that I was like, wow, the government's actually saying this is real. And we have, some evidence of this. Actually, 2019, I was 2 years behind whenever I became aware of that, because that was actually released in 2017. But at the point in time that I became aware of it, I started talking with friends and family and saying, have you seen this? And, people were just kind of smacking their lips and rolling their eyes, and I seemed to be the only person in my circle that had an interest in it, or even believed in the possibility of this. And so I found myself feeling kind of pretty alone, in that. And so I started a public group saying, let's, talk about UFOs. It was called UFO Discussion Group. And to my surprise, there were a lot of people out there that also resonated with, just wanting to be able to talk about the subject because of the stigma. They all were experiencing the same thing as me, where friends and family thought they were a little nutty if they even wanted to talk about it. And so they found that they had kindred spirits where they could kind of just open up and be themselves and explore these notions, and it was good for everybody, I think,
So, are you an experiencer? Have you seen UFOs personally?
Well, I'm going to say this. I've seen some things that I cannot explain. And so I, I, you know, I'm very cautious about that because I don't want to ever give the impression that what I have experienced was like really good solid evidence. But are you familiar with Chris Bledsoe? So
Yes.
Chris Bledsoe is also a North Carolina native, as we are, and he lives down close to Fayetteville. He's been actually studied by CIA and by NASA because he has this uncanny ability. I'm going to say that he calls UFOs and they come. He would not say that. He says that he asks them to come and he's very grateful when they do. Um, and so I went and spent an evening with him and a lot of other people, probably about 100 of us on an old bridge in Sanford, North Carolina. And we saw over the course of a couple of hours, we saw, mm, I'm going to guess about 80 orbs that, kind of flew all around us, some in formation, some, kind of singular ones, some that did some unusual things that were different than any of the others, kind of rotating, rolling kind of colors and so forth. Some that just flashed by really, really quickly. Um, and there was a friend of mine that was with me, and he had an app on his phone that tracked any aircraft and satellites. So we were able to determine which ones of those were anomalous and which ones were actually, identifiable. But they didn't come up real close, and no one came out and said, we'd like to be welcome to Earth or anything, but it was really pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I did a like a meditation a few years ago with Mark. I think his name is Mark Sims, who's from California, and they did this whole. I guess it was like a meditation, and there was
Mhm.
this like it looked like a falling star that they saw on their end, and I saw on my end, and I was in North Carolina, and they're in California. So again,
Mm,
it's like that, was that a message from the ETs or, or what? Because, I would like to see him
mhm.
like more face to face than just seeing orbs. I'm like ready for that
Right.
kind of
Mhm.
contact. But
Sure. Yeah.
let's talk about some other terms because I
Okay.
understand that the word people refer to them as aliens, but aliens is the best term, that the more politically correct term is calling them ETs or extraterrestrials,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
then there's also the NHI or non human intelligence, which is another term that's being used to describe the ETs. And then there's
Yeah.
also the UAP, which I guess the
Hmm.
government started changing things a little bit. Instead of calling them UFOs, now they're UAPs,
Hmm.
stands for unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So,
Yes.
what is the most memorable UFO account that you have
Um,
experienced, say, through your group or since you've been studying ETs?
I kind of put things into two different categories. So there's the personal experience category, and you there's no way to know for sure if Farmer Fred saw something fly across the top of his barn. It's a valid experience, and there are an awful lot of experiences like that, and people that I know personally who have had experiences like that. Um, but you only have, what they know about that to go on. But there are experiences as well where there were multiple sensor systems that were involved in recording the event all at the same time. And cases like that are way more intriguing to me because it feels like it's much more scientifically based in that way. So I guess probably the most famous encounter, and those of y'all that are, kind of new to the UFO phenomena, or you're kind of just seeking to find out what's the deal with this. I've been hearing stuff on the news. Let me get you to just go and Google the Nimitz encounter. And so what you're going to find out about is something that happened back during the early 2000s. So fairly recent, but, kind of back a ways. And it was when the Nimitz carrier group was doing training exercises off the coast of San Diego. They were getting ready to be deployed into the Gulf. And at that point in time, they were kind of doing, war game kind of drills, like getting prepared. So they had, all of these different ships kind of going with each other. And the Nimitz is a large aircraft carrier. So the Nimitz started picking up something on radar, but they also had a specialized ship, the Princeton, that was a brand new radar system that was able to track things that were coming in from outer space. So they picked up 20 objects that were inbound at 80,000 feet, which is basically the edge of space. And these objects, as they come in, they seem to drop down to the surface of the ocean and just hover above the surface of the ocean. The interesting thing about them coming in was that they went from 80,000 feet to just above the ocean in less than a second. And there was no fireball, there was no sonic boom associated with any of this. So it was very intriguing. You can imagine, and from a military perspective, you got to be wondering, is this incoming ICBMs or something like that? So the Nimitz had some F-18 fighter jets that were already in the air go to the closest object. And when they got there, they encountered something that was about the size of a school bus, white butane tank-shaped thing, or tic-tac is what the pilot, Commander Fravor, called it. And something you ought to know is that in these F-18s, there is the pilot in the front, and there's a person behind them that runs controls and so forth. And so there were two of these jets. So you actually had four eyewitnesses that were able to see this thing floating above the surface of the ocean. It had no control surfaces, like, on the planes, the flaps and so forth for being able to control the winged flight. No wings, no obvious signs of propulsion. And yet this thing turned and went towards one of the fighter jets. And as it was coming straight towards the fighter jet, it just zipped off at such a fast speed that the fighter pilot, said, it looked like it just disappeared on me. And something else that's really kind of intriguing about this encounter is anytime that you have a sortie of jets go out to engage, they always have kind of a, if everything goes bad, this is where we're going to meet up at, and they call it the cap point. So one of the radar operators on the Princeton called Commander Fravor and said, "You're not going to believe this, but that thing, it's 30 miles away now. It's at your cap point." So this obviously was intelligently controlled craft, whether there were pilots inside or whatever. It was flying under intelligence because it was kind of making a statement like, we not only can outdo you, 50 times over, but we also kind of know where you were planning on going back to. And so that it was picked up radar from the Princeton, from the Nimitz, and also they had an airplane in the sky that it's a radar airplane called an E-2 Hawkeye, picked it up. The two jets picked it up. All the pilots saw it. And then after they landed, another pilot, Chad Underwood, took off and he went and saw it. And he's the one that filmed it. And it's one of those 3 videos that have become the infamous videos that the New York Times has told us about. So, yeah, there's some pretty stuff out there if you really dig.
Yeah. So, yeah, I heard about the Nimitz, and that 2017 New York Times article, I guess, was really one of the first steps in disclosure in the recent history. Um, let's talk about just kind of a brief overview, kind of historical overview since Roswell. I guess Roswell was 1947, I guess. And of course, most people know about the cover up and all of this, and people have been wanting disclosure on this particular event, but there have been hundreds and hundreds of sightings and all kinds of different things since. Can you give us a brief history since Roswell of some of the highlights in this whole UFO disclosure movement?
There were actually supposed crash retrievals prior to Roswell. So there was one in 1933. And then during the Second World War, there was also a crash in Italy, and that was recovered by Mussolini and his troops. And then when the Allied forces went in, the Americans gained control of that. Now, I'm going to be able to point you to some specific, government files on that. No, I'm not going to be able to, but there have been intelligence officers that have talked about this kind of behind the scenes. And so, yeah, and then of course Roswell was, the one that really gained a lot of acclaim in the United States. It began with the notion that there was a crashed saucer-shaped UFO. There were eyewitnesses. There were military that picked up what was left of it. They made a press release saying that, yes, we have recovered a crashed UFO. And then the next day, they recanted all of that. They showed pictures of a balloon, pieces of a balloon. A lot of people were just like, you thought it was a saucer-shaped thing last night, but today you think it was a balloon. It never sat well with people. And then there's been a lot of additional kind of cover-up stuff since then. Around that period of time, the government set up several programs, one right after another. There was Project Grudge, Project Sign, and then the more well-known Project Blue Book that lasted about a decade for studying UFOs, taking reports from citizens as well as from military on sightings and encounters with UFOs. But in all of those cases, it seemed like the main job of the investigators was to find any way they could to debunk those sightings. And in fairness to them, we were coming out of World War II. We were in the Cold War. They were really concerned that if there were, kind of mass hysteria around a UFO encounter, that it may kind of bombard all of our airwaves and put us in a vulnerable position where our adversaries could attack during a period of time like that, and we would have very little response to it because of it. But there was a fellow that he was involved in all 3 of those projects. His name was J. Allen Hynek. And Hynek is the one that is infamously known for debunking a sighting and calling it swamp gas. And so, within the UFO community, anytime they're talking about, kind of with disdain, kind of talking about how people are not taking things seriously, or actually are spinning stories to downplay some very good evidence. It's Hynek's account of that swamp gas thing where it was so ridiculous. But having said that, after Hynek retired, he became very concerned about just how many of these stories that he actually felt were really valid, and how he believed that the government was treating this in an unfair way. And he spent the rest of his life going around and doing UFO investigations and publishing the research and so forth. So at the end of Project Blue Book, which was, I think, 68, the government said, we're done with this stuff. It's silly. We're wasting our time, our money on this. We're not doing that anymore. And so right up until 2017, that's what the government was telling us, that they had no UFO study programs. Then when Luis Elizondo and Christopher Mellon came out as whistleblowers to the New York Times to tell their story, it became known that Senator Harry Reid and Congress had designated $20 million to the study of UFOs, had set up a program called ALSAP, which was specifically for studying UFOs, a spin-off program that was to study military encounters was ATIP. Luis Elizondo was the one that headed that up for a time. And so he knew all of this very well. And so when that article came out, it wasn't just a revelation to the public that maybe there was something real about all of this UFO thing. It was that your government had been lying to you for a long time, and now it had come out that they had been studying UFOs all along, putting a lot of money into that, money that was designated for it. But now, as we're finding out, a lot of black project money that basically is being embezzled from other programs to cover the expenses of continued study. And I guess we can talk about the more modern era where things are being revealed about crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs, that sort of thing.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll learn more about UFO disclosure.
You don't know that at the very top, that whole project is being run illegally.
These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
These technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law.
It's like, wow, nobody's coming after us. We're going to do this until we can get away with it.
They would have so much control over everything if they had that.
If this information was all released, it could fall into the wrong hands.
They're using security as a cover for illicit or illegal or even treasonous activities.
The members of Congress didn't have the detailed information of the precise location.
Where they keep the bodies, the craft, the debris, all the evidence that we've been searching for the last 80 years.
He knew how to keep a secret. Secrets were his stock in trade.
They're literally making their own money to fund their own projects.
We have a source currently in the deep black world.
It doesn't matter if you're president of the United States, you're not going to talk about that.
There was this large monolithic slab. Looked like it was elevated off of the ground.
It is traumatic.
Look, this is the most top secret shit you've ever heard of.
Unidentified, anomalous phenomena is real, but the government continues to obstruct the truth. It's time to stand up. It's time we join together and make our government accountable for transparency. Please go to newparadigminstitute.org, take action, and join our Citizens for Disclosure movement.
Welcome back to the show. I've been talking with Craig Richards from the Citizens for Disclosure group. Yes, so you brought us from Roswell through the different projects like Project Blue Book, and then you're saying 2017 was the big reveal in the New York Times. Now, what about since 2017 with the legislation that's happened and, Danny Sheehan's work?
Since 2017, it's like a snowball rolling down a hill where it just gets bigger and bigger as it goes, picks up speed. It's amazing what all has happened in the past, 6 years, 5-6 years here. There's been a bipartisan effort in Congress and in the Senate to bring about disclosure. I'll just kind of explain that briefly. Disclosure, we're talking about, so the government knows stuff. They've been keeping records and films, and the 3 videos that we see that are grainy gun camera footage video that is in, grays. They have, 4K beautiful photographs and film of UFOs, and this has become very known. Now, Congress has become involved in the effort to get the intelligence community to kind of go ahead and declassify whatever is possible to be declassified, to put it into a repository that would go into the National Archive. So any citizen would be able to look at all of that files, pictures, films, and so forth like that. Back around 2019, Marco Rubio and Kirsten Gillibrand, so Rubio being a prominent Republican, Gillibrand, prominent Democrat, working side by side, wrote whistleblower protections. They wanted for anybody that was working in these programs to be able to come forward without fear of reprisals. The legislation that they wrote, it has been improved upon a little bit at a time and is continuing to be improved upon so that the whistleblowers feel like they are truly protected. They also, at that point in time, set up an organization that is called AARO, AARO, and that organization is specifically tasked with taking grievances from whistleblowers, cataloging, and looking at all of the reports about any kind of UFO sightings and encounters. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, that whistleblowers have been coming directly to Congress, even though Congress had set up AARO, because they felt like AARO was actually not a trusted place to go, that AARO was not really working for them, but working against them, so they really didn't trust it. So then the work that Congress has done is that they have set up certain legislation. So last year, there was an amendment referred to as the Schumer Amendment because Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, and also Mike Rounds of North Dakota, Senator Rounds, worked on legislation together. This amendment went into the National Defense Authorization Act, and it mentioned non-human intelligence 27 times in that. And so, we talked about that a little earlier. Non-human intelligence is the word that we're using now for alien or extraterrestrial, however you want to say that. But the point of it being that they were trying to force, no better word for it than force, or exercise their right. There's three branches of government: the legislative, and there's the Supreme Court, and then there's the executive branch, which is presidential, but also covers all the military and the intelligence community. Basically, Congress, their oversight over the military and the intelligence community, they were exercising that oversight. So they were trying to say, okay, if you have any information on UFOs, we want to know what you have. We also, if you have in your possession crashed craft, we want to know about that. If you've been trying to reverse engineer it, we want to know anything that you have on that. And we want to set up a panel. This panel would have the authority to declassify files that were overclassified, so that we could disclose that to the public and or at least to Congress. And then it would go into the National Archive, anything that we could declassify. Well, they did pass that through the Senate, and then it went to the House, and there was a bit of resistance in the House from people who, interestingly enough, it was the very congressmen that were being funded by defense contractors that were fighting against it. And so they took the eminent domain piece out, which is, where we're going to be able to take that stuff from you if you have it. They also took out the subpoena power portion of that bill, so that they couldn't call anybody in and get them to testify before Congress, or force them to anyway. But they did leave in there that intelligence community, military, private contractors that have any information on UFOs has to turn that over to us in 300 days. And 300 days was mid-October. The amendment that was passed and signed into law by Joe Biden, that was passed and in the National Defense Authorization Act in December, I think it was December 22nd, 2023. And it said you have 300 days to turn over all the information you have on this. And so that gave us till October of 2024 when they were supposed to have turned over everything that they had. That's the reason that we have called it Global Disclosure Day, is because that was when they were supposed to turn over all that information. But as is common with the government, they asked for an extension. And so instead of October of 2024, they now have until September of 2025 to turn over all of that information. So we're still eagerly awaiting to see when we're going to get all of this turned over.
And so on October 20th of 2024, the New Paradigm Institute said, okay, well, we'll make this World Disclosure Day, and they did a special event. And I actually have about a 9-minute clip from Danny Sheehan, who is the president of the New Paradigm Institute, to talk, kind of give us a little bit more information about why it's so important, why this whole UFO disclosure thing is so important.
What we're dealing with here is forcing the Congress of the United States to force the executive branch to reveal to the people of the world the 6 major facts that have to be addressed. Number one, that the UFO phenomenon is real. That this is not mistaken identities of birds or some other kind of technology that is just a secret program of the United States government or some other foreign power. These UFOs are actually vehicles, that they're transporting organic live beings from some other planet in our galaxy and some other dimension within our galaxy, and that they're coming and going to our planet right now and have been for some time. They, in fact, have bases here on our planet, many of which are located high in the desolate areas in the mountains where very few people ever go, and beneath the sea. There's a major base in the Pacific that we're virtually certain exists off Baja, between Baja and Guadalupe Island, potentially beneath the ocean floor. This has been monitored. We have hundreds of videos of the vehicles coming and going from that location and plunging into the sea and going down into and coming from this base. This is extraordinarily important for everyone to understand. Very importantly, there is some percentage inside our national security state apparatus that knows this to be true. And they are, in fact, engaged, as Ross Coulthard pointed out, they are engaged at the present time in a kinetic or active program attempting to shoot down these UFOs, basically attempting to bring them down with this cyclotronic weapon that they have designed, and that they are taking captive the members who pilot these craft. This is an extraordinarily dangerous situation that is going on in secret, and that there's been a campaign mounted by the national security state apparatus to keep this secret from Congress, to lie to American presidents about this, and to lie consistently to the American public to keep this concealed. And the reason for this is the fact that they are attempting to back engineer or reverse engineer this technology so they can design weapons that can put them in a position of comparative advantage over other nation states, such as Russia and China and North Korea. This is an extraordinarily narrow, restricted view of what the potentials are here, of this extraordinary moment in our history. And that we have to understand that the present state of the success of our campaign is just barely getting underway right now. That we've been at this for many decades, and as Lou pointed out, since the 2017 disclosure on the front page of the New York Times that this is real, the testimony back July 26th of 2023 of David Grush telling Congress in open session that we're in possession of a number of these UFO craft and the bodies of the non-human occupants of these craft. This information has now been conveyed to Congress. Our job as the citizens is to make Congress respond effectively. The United States Senate has done so in the passage of its statute back in 2023 on July 27th, the day after David Grush's testimony on the House side. The Senate has passed a 64-page bill, and that is the operative bill that we're in the process of trying to get passed completely. Certain limited numbers of people in the House of Representatives have tried to stop the full passage of the Senate bill. Our job as a collective community here, not only in the United States, but around the world, is to press forward to get this entire 64-page bill passed as soon as possible. In fact, immediately. This is our job, and it needs to be our first priority when the new administration comes in and the new Congress comes in, the Senate and the House, whichever the division of power is between the two parties. When the election is over, we need to put to the top of their agenda coming to grips with this reality. Because people will say, well, why be concerned about this since this has been going on for so long? The reality is that our human family is closer to thermonuclear war as we sit here today on this Sunday, October 20th, the date on which this information was supposed to be turned over to our National Archives. We are faced with a national security state infrastructure that is defying the will of Congress, and that they're refusing to turn this over. And they've exercised power to get the National Archives to give them virtually another full year This cannot be accepted. And why is that? Because the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have now reset the doomsday clock. They have set the doomsday clock to 90 seconds before midnight. That's 90 seconds before a potential thermonuclear holocaust on our planet that will destroy the life-generating capacity of our planet and our entire species and millions of other species on our planet. The danger that is being presented now by that potential thermonuclear war. You need to understand, the United States, under bipartisan administrations, under the administration of George Bush Sr., George W. Bush, Obama, and also Biden, have moved nuclear missiles into Germany and into Poland, and they are starting to reset the fuses of these nuclear missiles, 1,600 nuclear missiles. They're resetting them to instant detonation for a potential first strike against Russia and China and North Korea. This has caused Putin in Russia to start giving instructions to his commanders in the field to start exercising practice sessions on the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons in the Ukraine. This is unacceptable. And the realization is that the extraterrestrial beings and the extra-dimensional beings that are crafted, they're flying these craft, these UFO craft, have demonstrated their ability and their willingness to shut down these nuclear facilities. They have not only shut down individual missiles in various silos across the country and across the world, they have in fact totally immobilized entire United States nuclear aircraft carrier battle groups, have shut them down completely. No communications, no radar, no propulsion systems, in the middle of the dark, sitting there helpless. They have the capacity to do this, and they're letting us know that they have the capacity to do this. And if in fact this march toward a potential thermonuclear exchange continues, there is a potential of the intervention on the part of these extraterrestrial beings into our affairs here to shut down all of the nuclear facilities across the world. And that will in fact reveal their existence long before we have been adequately prepared to integrate the realization of the existence of this extraterrestrial civilization here on our planet. And this has been made impossible because of the effort on the part of this tiny element inside the national security state bureaucracy in our country to lie and deceive and dissemble and to tell our Congress and to tell our presidents and to tell our people that this simply isn't true, that they're simply not here. Now, this revelation, if it's compelled by an intervention on the part of the UFO occupants, if this takes place, this is a potential catastrophic disclosure, revealing this information before our people have come to adjust to this. This is an extraordinarily important event that is going on right now. It distinguishes this event from the past history, that we're in this moment right now, that this threat is imminent right now, and we've got to get revelation made. So we cannot sit around and wait until just next year at the passage of the new National Defense Authorization Act, a year from now in the next December of 2025. We have to move immediately, beginning in January of this coming year, when the new administration comes into office, the new Congress comes into session. We need to move this to the top of the priorities right now to get this disclosure made.
So he has a lot of urgency in his message there from the Global Disclosure Day. And for people who missed the Global Disclosure Day, I have a tiny URL that you can watch the whole thing. That was just a snippet. And so what response do you have to some of the things he was mentioning there?
Well, Danny has a lot of insights into things that a lot of the rest of us do not. And you know, his offices, his law offices are actually in the same building with Congress. His law offices are the only ones, period, that are in the same building with Congress. So he kind of rubs shoulders with Congress all the time. Danny is the one that has written a lot of the whistleblower protection language that has gone into these bills that Congress has passed. So he has a lot of insights into things.
So, what's the best way people can become volunteers? I understand there's like 43 states that have a lead like you of the Citizens for Disclosure group in each of the states. What's the best way for people to sign up to become a volunteer?
Citizens for Disclosure, as of last week, has 44 states that are represented. So we have another state, Ohio, joined in. North Carolina is, one of the more recent states. So we're just still trying to get all of our infrastructure in place to be able to, be helpful to the general public. But you, as an individual, can go on newparadigminstitute.org. On the homepage, you'll see a bar where it says Take Action.
As I've said before, I followed a lot of Stephen Greer's work, and he actually is coming out with a new movie on December 10th called The Battle for Disclosure. So this will be available on all the streaming platforms on December 10th. And here's the website for Dr. Stephen Greer as well. He does a lot with the CE. He actually was the one that came up with the CE5 protocol, which is an app on your phone that has different meditations and ways to communicate, has some kind of like signal that you play and the training on how to make contact with the different ETs. I love to ask my guests, what do they do to raise their vibration? So what do you personally do to raise your vibration?
I'm an artist. I'm a professional artist. You can go to artistcraigrichards.com, see some of my work if you'd like to. I mainly do traditional representational art, so a lot of nature. And I love to get out into nature. I suggest for anybody to do that. Take a walk, take a hike. I love to go paddling, all kinds of paddling, like canoeing or kayaking in streams and lakes, but also sea kayaking and so forth. And it's just wonderful. And I'm a sculptor as well, and done metal work. Anything where I'm creating, I just feel like I'm totally in my element to do that. So, inventing, just seeing something in my head and then being able to actually bring that into reality and be able to touch that thing is just, that gives me a lot of energy. Love it.
You are truly a Renaissance man.
Thank you. But yeah, I step in way more things than I probably ought to.
Seems like you're very well-rounded and very talented. Well, Craig, thank you so much for this interview. And, before we go, is there any last message that you want to get across to our viewers?
Educate yourself on what's going on with this. If you're somebody that stumbled on this, or you're somebody that you've heard a couple of news stories and you're like, are they really taking this seriously now? It's hard to muddle through all of the stuff that is more sensational and, less science-based, but it's out there. If you'll look for it, and most certainly, there are organizations where you can connect with other people and find out more about what's going on, because this is a reality, and it's okay for you to explore that, even if your friends and family don't feel comfortable doing that themselves. You can do it. It's okay.
Thank you so much, Craig, for this interview, and hopefully we'll get a lot more people involved in volunteering for Citizens for Disclosure.
Absolutely. Love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you for watching. If you received value from the show, please like, share, and subscribe so everyone can learn how to raise their vibration. Peace out, everyone.